Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Millennial Project. Today I want to talk about patriotic correctness or political correctness on the right. The conservative populist voters who pushed Donald Trump into the White House love to decry political correctness. They love to say things like, our youth in America are being brainwashed by liberal professors in colleges that are more concerned with safe spaces than with learning. They love to say that if we're going to defeat ISIS, the first thing we have to do is call ISIS radical Islamic terrorists rather than just terrorists, that kind of thing. But is it possible that the right has its own version of political correctness, their own, set of rules and ideas and values that dictate how, when, and even if certain things can be talked about? Well, Alex Nowrasteh from the Cato Institute, a Washington, D.C. think tank that skews libertarian, Alex Nowrasteh says that this is not only possible, but that it is already happening and could be a bad thing for conservatives in the future. So let me grab a quote from Alex. I have it printed out right here because I think it'll really help us get a better idea of, what this phenomenon of patriotic correctness actually is. So, as you already know, Alex calls this conservative version of political correctness patriotic correctness, and instead of prioritizing diversity and inclusion, patriotic correctness demands conformity to, as Alex puts it, a full-throated, un-nuanced, and uncompromising defense of American nationalism, history, and cherry-picked ideals. So, this is that kind of like America, fuck yeah, Team America, World Police style of understanding America's role in the world and American history. This refusal to recognize any sort of shameful mistakes in America's past, that kind of a thing. When Alex talks about this in some podcasts and some articles he's written, he really does a good job, I think, explaining where potentially this, hardcore, conservative, rigid value system that might define how and when people can talk about things, this conservative version of political correctness, has created some contradictions in, the conservative outlook on the world, the conservative sort of platform, if you will. So let me grab my quote sheet again because I think there's some really good stuff here. So what I want to do is quote from an article that Alex wrote for the Washington Post that really explains, I think, some of these contradictions very well. So here it is. As he says, according to political correctness, unionized public employees who can't be fired are bad at their jobs and are more interested in increasing their own power than fulfilling their public duties, except if they are police or border patrol officers who are unselfishly devoted to their jobs. According to patriotic correctness, Black Lives Matter is racist because it implies that black lives are more important than other lives, but Blue Lives Matter doesn't imply that cops' lives are more important than the rest of ours. According to patriotic correctness, transgender people could access women's restrooms for perverted purposes, but Donald Trump walking in on nude underage girls in dressing rooms before a beauty pageant is just media bias. According to patriotic correctness, waving a Mexican flag on U.S. soil means you hate America, but waving a Confederate flag just means you're proud of your heritage. According to patriotic correctness, poor white Americans are the victims of economic dislocation and globalization beyond their control, while poor blacks and Hispanics are poor because of their failed cultures. According to patriotic correctness, by the way, this is a paraphrase, not a direct quote, there is no such thing as too much national security despite concerns about its effect on individual freedom, but homosexuals should not be allowed to get married because it infringes on religious liberty. Alex continues writing, the patriotically correct rightly ridicule PC safe spaces, but promptly retreat to Breitbart or talk radio, where they can have mutually reinforcing homogenous temper tantrums while complaining about the lack of intellectual diversity on the left. So I think that these are just some interesting contradictions that Alex brings up about the conservative ideology, at least when it's limited by this notion of patriotic correctness. But in addition to that, I think there really has been, at least over the past year since Donald Trump has come on the stage, a concerted effort on the Republican side, whether it's conscious or subconscious, to really push a new vocabulary, a new language that can compete with this, sort of more left-leaning discourse of political correctness. And I think that this is really visible in this emergence of new words into our political dialogue that we haven't heard a lot before. Things like the deep state, reverse racism has gotten a lot more play in the last few months. Of course, we have the ongoing battle over whether you should say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and, probably the most obvious and one of the things that was brought up most often in the campaign is this demand that we say radical Islamic terrorists rather than just terrorists, which I mentioned before earlier in the video. So what's really interesting too is that it's not just that this language is being created, but you have conservatives, especially these more kind of populist, Trump-leaning conservatives, demanding that people use this new language to describe, what they're seeing in the world. So Alex, again, who works at Cato, and he actually covers immigration policy for Cato, brings up a really interesting experience that he had when it comes to this issue of patriotic correctness when he was trying to talk to Trump voters about immigration policy. And so he would ask, what do you think of Donald Trump being anti-immigrant? And of course, he would get a response from a lot of these more conservative Trump voters like, no, it's not that he's anti-immigrant, he's just anti-illegal immigrant. Well, Alex knows that this isn't necessarily true because during the campaign, Donald Trump released a platform on his website that basically had policies that would also reduce legal immigration as well as illegal immigration. So he is in many ways anti-immigrant, not just anti-illegal immigrant. But still, you had conservatives who didn't know this demanding and trying to force Alex into using this different, language. No, it's anti-illegal immigrant, not just anti-immigrant, that kind of a thing. And I think this is really interesting because, you have people who say that they are the guardians of free speech, people who say that they are fighting to make sure that we can have this open and honest dialogue, people who claim to say whatever is on their minds and claim to have voted for a man who does the same thing. But we can see here that neither side really seems to have a monopoly on free speech, and that just as much as the liberals that conservatives like to decry, these very conservatives will work to determine what you can and can't say, what can and can't be brought up, and how you can and cannot talk about it. And so what does that mean for millennials, for a lot of us who are out here, again, just trying to get our bearings in this vastly chaotic, very unstable political environment? I think what it really means is that we have to really be careful who we put our confidence in. Obviously, a lot of millennials don't skew conservative, but instead of letting the parties tell us what we should think about things and tell us, how we should go about looking at issues, I think it's really a lot more valuable if we push back at these political beliefs that a lot of us have sort of taken on, that we constantly are working to reassess if these beliefs are valid and if they stand, in accordance with the, higher, political ideals or democratic ideals that I think all of us can agree, whether we're conservative or liberal, are at the base of our country and should guide us moving forward. I am trying to do that right here with the Millennial Project. If you want to be a part of this kind of journey to try to figure out, what we are all about as millennials and what we can do to get, real tangible progress on a lot of these major issues facing our generation as we come into power and take the reins of leadership across our society, definitely feel free to hit that subscribe button. That will keep you up to date with the Millennial Project's latest videos. If you're already on board and you want to support the Millennial Project, please feel free to share what we're doing with your friends, your family, etc. Last but not least, I really do just want to thank Alex Nowrasteh from the Cato Institute. I have not talked to him directly for this piece, but I've read some of the stuff he's written on patriotic correctness, and I've listened to a podcast he did on the subject, and I just think it's really great that he's brought this concept into our discussion, hopefully kind of opened our minds up a little bit to understanding the conservative side, maybe just a little bit differently. So with that in mind, just thank you again, Alex. I will put links to all of his stuff in the video description. All right, that's all there is for me. So until next time, this is Andrew Davis for the Millennial Project.